Thank you so much. It's a real dream to be here. I mean that, the fulfillment of a dream. Yeah, more on that in a bit. My great-grandfather cut off not one, but two of his own toes to avoid being drafted into the front lines of the Tsar's army more than 100 years ago. And in that single act, that single brutal act, can be found a great deal of Jewish spiritual wisdom. Today, I want to share with you 5 teachings. This is the cream, the best from many decades of my own study. A type of survival guide for difficult times. The Jewish people know a lot about what it means to be vulnerable, to be unsure, to have to live in the unknown. And these 5 teachings, they are not solutions to all of our problems. They're strategies, they're approaches, they're orientations. And we strive for unity, right? The theme of this conference is the quest for unity. It's a quest. And we hold out hope that we get there all together. But until then, the journey itself is the destination. So these are 5 journeys I want to share today towards that quest for unity. We're going to be going from fracture to wholeness, from trust to connection, and finally to the holy art of disagreement. These teachings are drawn from Kabbalah, Hasidism. These are both varieties of Jewish mysticism, and they also simply come from Jewish wisdom itself. Among the many amazing conversations I've already had since arriving here a couple days ago, I was speaking yesterday with someone who was asking about mysticism and Judaism, where do they fit in? And I said, most of the great teachers in our tradition for the last 2,000 years have been mystics. They might not have spoken of their individual experiences. It was passé for many reasons. But what they teach, it comes from a very, very deep place, even if the teaching itself is very practical and worldly and very simple. So I'll be drawing on all of these resources. The goal is for everyone here to have guideposts and holy crutches. And what I mean by that is sometimes the word crutch, most of the time it's seen as a negative statement. Oh, this is just a crutch to lean on. But they're actually really important to have. I am not particularly interested in or capable of becoming a superhero. So we have crutches. We have things we can lean on. These are 5 teachings that offered from the Jewish tradition to you all, to anyone who's tuning in to listen, that are here to help guide the way in good times and in bad. We don't know what will be, but in every moment of every day, we have an opportunity to sow a seed proactively for everyone and peace for ourselves and the whole world. A little bit about me. I grew up in a relatively culturally Jewish household in Canada. And as I grew older, as a teenager, I found this amazing world of spiritual practice. Initially in the Jewish tradition, but beyond that, for many years I considered myself a universalist, and that was my identity spiritually. I went to Naropa University to be a more developed universalist, learn practices and teachings from the great world traditions. And something happened while I was there. I felt this call come from beyond. And I couldn't explain it at the time, but it was very clear the direction was go be a rabbi. And I struggled with that for a long time because I said, this doesn't really make sense. But eventually I took the plunge, I walked into those waters. And what I found there were these, many of which were untranslated, unknown, beautiful teachings that I felt I just had to share with the world. And so I'm still a universalist. I'm a universalist who has pointed into the deep study of Jewish tradition. I've spent many years doing that, but it, in its essence, has always been for the sake of everyone. So when I say it's a dream to be here, that's what I mean. Now, I don't know how many people have studied much Judaism or have spent that much time with rabbis, and some things that I took for granted growing up, sometimes people have curiosities about, and I'll just name one of them. And when we get to the Q&A, by the way, it can be on this subject, but if you want to just ask a rabbi, I'm also around for the rest of the weekend and beyond, all the way till Tuesday. So in my family growing up and in my community, we never talked about being chosen. That wasn't a part of our identity. We generally saw the idea of Jews as a chosen people to be an outmoded, pre-modern way of thinking. And if anything, today, I've been inspired by the colleagues who are Unitarian Universalists. And to be a Universalist, as I've understood that, means that everyone has salvation, not just Christians. And that's what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist partly. So I thought about, what does it mean to be a Jewish Universalist? Well, everyone's chosen. Everyone has a path. Every people, every group, every community has an honored place in our world and our societies. So that's basically how I approach this whole topic. So going back to my great-grandfather, Ralph, he lived in a world of dislocation, a world of vulnerability, the fractures, the wilderness. This was a part of life, being, at that point, an oppressed minority. And his situation was not unique. His situation was not unique for the Jewish people. His situation was not unique for any member of any oppressed people in the past or the present or the future. But part of that experience is a real lack of control. You're not in charge. You don't have a king, you don't have a protector. You're sort of at the whims at the end of the day. But Ralph did have some choice. He had a choice within this place, this narrowness, this constriction. To be Jewish in that era and to be drafted into the Tsar's army meant to be in the front lines, to be more or less cannon fodder. It was nearly a death sentence. And so acknowledging that, with what little control he had, he took an act. He harmed himself in a way enough by severing his toes that it allowed him to get out of that situation. A choice that I would not wish upon anyone on earth. What he did in that moment, he could not have known. But soon after, not only did he survive, he emigrated, he moved to Canada, he brought his family over, and they lived a relatively simple existence, and their kids had a relatively better existence, and a few generations later, I got to grow up in an extremely peaceful time, an extremely peaceful place. That a lot of this work is about sowing seeds for the future, seeds we might not get to experience in their fullness ourselves, but that have the capacity to change the world for the better in ways that we cannot possibly predict. So this moment, where we are right now, the reason this convention has this name, Quest for Unity, Finding Harmony in a Fractured World, is because people are really feeling that right now. All of us want things to get better. And part of the path there, and part of the path forward is learning about ancestral ways, rich traditions that have allowed people in similar circumstances in the past to just take one step forward and then another, to find well-being, to find harmony. This is our world. This is our world of wholeness. It's what we love to believe. It's what we love to see. There's everything as one. The first teaching out of 5 today is that, as it turns out, the first step in finding harmony in a fractured world is to admit that the world is fractured. There is a school of thought in the history of Kabbalah, or Kabbalah, if you want, that comes from the 16th century, a teacher by the name of Isaac Luria. He spent about 7 years in a cave on an island in the Nile, coming home for Sabbaths and going back, returning with a few holy books. And by the time he came out and he taught for less than 2 years, he revealed a whole new view of our cosmos. He taught that in the beginning, before time, before space, it was only the infinite, what we call in Hebrew Ein Sof. And the infinite carved out a space through a series of contractions in which a hollow void remained in which the world could be created. Divine light was poured in step by step into this hollow in order to create the basis for what would become our manifest reality. But something happened along the way. Maybe it was planned. Maybe it was one of those oops moments that the divine seems to have. But the vessels, the containers, like clay pots containing this divine light, they became overwhelmed and they shattered. The vessels themselves became shards associated with the origins of negativity, of the demonic, of evil in our world. And the light itself, intermixed with those shards, went everywhere. So for the Lurianic Kabbalist, it's all about finding the light. And the way we do that, the way anyone does that, if we're going to reclaim light and help it go back to where it's supposed to be, we have to acknowledge that this is a situation we're in. The many. There's something to be said. There's a lot to be said. And maybe it's so simple we don't need to say much about the one. All is one. And how can we heal the difference? How can we learn from the other? How can we see our own faults if our view is simply all is one, all is good? In the Jewish tradition, we don't have monks. We don't have nuns. All of our great teachers in history have been householders, people with dependents, families, work. And so one of the ways that we work with our world is by dividing things up into different times. There is a time for oneness. We're going to get to that next. But the path of dealing with the brokenness is about acknowledging difference. And it doesn't end there, of course. Can we grapple with the brokenness without being overwhelmed by it? The minute, by the way, that anyone feels they're being subsumed by the negativity that exists in some way at every time and every place in our world, if we're feeling hopeless, that's an indication to step off this path. Step off this path of transformation. But in the meantime, if we can hold the brokenness, if we can be present with it, and there's many ways of doing that, there's a process that occurs, described metaphorically by the Kabbalists as where the light separates out from the shards. The idea here is not that evil or negativity is inherently bad. It's that it's out of place. Everything comes from the divine in this understanding. So when we can tune into it, whether that's internally or externally, and we can find that aha moment where things start to shift, the light is freed from the dark, from the shard. The light goes back to its proper place within us, within the spiritual realm, and the shard transforms and returns as well. The whole hope of Lurianic Kabbalah, and it can be universalized and extended in many different ways, is that when the cosmic realm is repaired and healed, then the divine light and the divine blessings can flow. It's similar in ourselves. This word in Hebrew is tikkun. It literally means healing or repair and could be translated as transformation. As an example, if someone's feeling very angry, this is a sort of an inner tikkun moment. Someone feels very angry. That could just simply be as it is. Maybe it would be destructive or maybe not, but there's usually something underlying a sense of anger. Maybe there's a sadness there. Maybe there's an anxiety. Whatever that is, if we can introspect beneath the shards, the husks, the shells, we can get into something that is deeper. And then maybe there's a story behind that sadness. Maybe we can remember how this all arose in the first place. And that moment of realization, that's that tikkun. That's that healing. That's that repair. And there's a shift that can take place. This happens internally. It also happens externally. One of the metaphors that's used, there's a string that connects our hearts to the divine. And you could also say there are strings between everyone we know. Sometimes we make a misstep. We offend someone, intentionally, unintentionally. It's like breaking that string. Tikkun is the process of coming to terms with why we've done that, feeling genuine remorse, and asking forgiveness. If that can be received by the person on the other end, it's like retying that string. And what happens when you have a string that's, say, this long and it's broken? What happens when you tie it together? It gets closer. It's shorter. Tikkun is a process that doesn't go back from -3 to 0. It goes from -3 to +3. There is a transformation and reparation that is stronger than it was. Like that knot in that string is the strongest part of that string now. So this is a teaching about not being reluctant to make mistakes, to acknowledge the brokenness, and to dance with it, to dance the dance of tikkun, because everything has hopefulness and a promise of reparation. Beyond this path is, in a sense, its opposite. If this is sacred work, we also have sacred rest, sacred celebration, sacred delight and enjoyment. In so many ways, as much as I'm sure everyone in this room and anyone watching has felt the trembling of safety and security in our world in various ways, if we look back to our ancestors, not even that far back, we know how much we have to be grateful for. That in so many ways, we're still living the dreams of our predecessors. Not in every way. There's lots of work to do. But this path of rest begins with acknowledgments like that, of gratitude for all we truly have. As much as the world, we can perceive it as broken at any moment. It's not very hard for most of us to find faults if we try just a little bit. What is also simultaneously true at any time and any place is there is wholeness, there is well-being, there is love, there is connection. That's that oneness in this orientation. So I'd like to do a little bit of an experiential in this moment. Maybe we could have the lights up. I'll try this. Let there be light. There we go. So we're going to do, there's just a brief conversation, then a meditation, then another brief conversation. So round one, just turn to a partner. And if you're online or if you're sitting away from someone, just do this internally and tell them, we'll take like 1 minute, maybe 30 seconds each. describe what you were doing the day before you came to the convention. Right? Just a little conversation. Take 30 seconds each. And if you're online or on your own, just think about what you were doing the day before the convention. All right. Thank you. And then for this next segment, I'd like everyone to get comfortable and to feel your feet on the ground. Take a few slow breaths. Feeling the contact points between your body and your chair. Just continue to take slow breaths. Bring yourself in your mind to a place, real or imagined, that feels like paradise. Is there a memory, a time where everything felt just right? Or maybe just creating a space in your mind, a place of paradise. Can you connect with it, with your inner seeing or your inner hearing, if there's any sounds there, any physical sensations, or any other senses? Just continue taking slow breaths as you come to be in that place of paradise in your mind. When you're ready, notice how you feel being in that place. What emotions or embodied sensations or visions are there in that place where all is well and all is good. And whatever you've encountered or noticed in that place, just mark it in your mind, remembering an element from it. Continuing to take slow breaths as you return to this physical space. Feeling again the contact points between your body and your seat and your feet on the floor. And when you're ready, you can return to this space. And whatever you found there, I invite you to turn again to that same partner and share any piece of it, whatever feels alive, aligned, and whatever feels comfortable to share. Let's do another minute or so of sharing with the lights on of anything, any feeling, any image from that place of paradise within. All right, coming back together. Okay, thank you. And I'm wondering if John or anyone has a mic, if we could I'm just curious, one or two insights, if there's any difference in the tone of your conversation between just what did you do a couple days ago versus what did you encounter in that inner world? Yeah, we'll do two, please.
The big thing for me was the first thing I thought about was like decades ago, as far as something that was really pleasant as compared to what I did yesterday.
Really pleasant. Great. Absolutely. Anyone else?
Thinking about what I did a few days ago felt like a daily doldrum. But thinking about my special place, which was in the Andes Mountains, just washed me with the peace and the moment of wholeness that I felt in that time.
Beautiful. Yeah, and we're just going to do two for now, but we have Q&A at the end if you want to share more. That's what we're hearing. Just these snippets are exactly what this is about. Sacred rest. It's about tuning in to delight. On Monday, I'm leading a whole workshop on how to, just on this teaching on sacred rest. But for now, the key really is, can we find moments in our days, our weeks, our years, when we can reach that sense of paradise? And whether that's an internal meditation or some classic practices like eating our most favorite food and spending time with our most favorite people and singing our most favorite songs. These are all part of that. It's called a taste of heaven on earth. That's the goal. That's the key to refreshment in this orientation. It's called Shabbat in traditional Judaism. Yes, it's the seventh day, Friday night to Saturday night, but it's also a state of awareness, a state of consciousness. Shabbat consciousness is about delight. It's about finding moments or even a whole day of paradise here on earth. And one of the teachings, they say, one of my favorite parables about this, it's not easy to do nothing but work, right? We can get burnt out. So one of the teachings is that imagine there's someone who is having a hard time walking. They're walking with a limp or something like that, but it's the kind of thing they might be able to overcome. But if they try every day and they're not able to do it, they might give up entirely. So imagine one day a week where they could walk perfectly straight. They'd never give up trying. It's a taste of heaven on earth. The ideal of sacred rest, in the sense, it's about coming to a place in this world that feels like we've made it, that all the work is done, not that we've just put it aside. The goal is to come to a place where we see the world as whole. And besides simply feeling delightful and being in a very good place, it also empowers us and gives us motivation and ideas and insights to carry on that work that we need to do beyond those sacred moments. So that's number 2, sacred rest. But it's a journey, right? This is a picture of, a computer-generated picture of Moses standing at the Sea of Reeds. Often translated as the Red Sea. We could get into why it's actually the Sea of Reeds, in the Hebrew. But as much as the Jewish tradition is oriented towards the Bible, the vast majority of our wisdom lineage is coming from rabbinic teachings that begin about 2,000 years ago, significantly later than when these first stories are first written down. And there's something called the Midrash, and that's essentially a rabbinic interpretation of a biblical story, and sometimes they come in the form of new stories, sort of like spiritual fan fiction on the Bible. Truly. And so there's a story told of a character named Nachshon and his role in the parting of the sea. Moses is standing there. The Egyptians are pursuing the Israelites, and they're getting closer, and it's not looking very good. And Moses, in this account, is standing with his staff in the air, waiting for something to happen. But nothing's happening. Right? He hadn't changed the batteries maybe, or the Bluetooth is connected to the wrong body of water, whatever's going on, and it's sort of, what's going to happen? And Nachshon, he says, I'm going for it anyways. I trust that this is meant to be. And so he walks up to his ankles into the sea, and then he walks up to his knees and up to his waist and up to his shoulders and up to his neck, and he's about to be consumed by the water. And it's at that moment that the seas part. Nachshon is exhibiting a quality in Judaism and in Hebrew known as emunah. Emunah can be translated as faith, but it's not faith in the sense of believing something that can't be proven. If I look at any one of you and I say, I have faith in you, it doesn't mean that I'm pretty sure you exist, but I can't prove it. It means that I believe in you. And emunah in this sense is to believe in the unfolding of reality and have trust that even though the way is unclear, something is here for us to find. So there's a line from the book of Psalms. Le'agid baboker chastecha v'emunatecha balilot. To speak of your love in the morning and your trust, your emunah, in the nights. So this is a biblical passage from a long time ago, 3,000 years, something like that. The Psalms go very far back, 2,500. And it's interpreted, there's a Jewish mystic in the 18th century known as the Chernobyler Rebbe, actually. He lived in Chernobyl. And, he was called the Ordained, the illumination of the eyes is another one of his names. And he says these are two ways of living in the world based on what we're experiencing. So love in the morning or love in the daylight. In the Hasidic mystical lineage, which is about 300 years old, give or take, there's a central teaching that our souls go in a journey, a continual journey to some degree of expansion and contraction. That most of us, mortals, are not continuously in an endless expanded state. It would be nice sometimes. And so when we're expanded, our role is to connect to that great light and to bring it into our world, to act as bridges when things are really in tune, when things are really working. But in the nights, when the lights go out, when we're wandering, when things are scary or unclear, the orientation is one of emunah, of trust. We don't know what's coming, but can we bring ourselves to a place where we can really feel that we can take that next step? Put another way, emunah is, despite what I am going through, I trust that there is meaning and purpose here. Though it is painful and the solution unclear, a deeper part of me is awake, listening, and open. This experience is not random. I am not forsaken. This moment is meant for me. So this is teaching number 3, sacred trust. We have our work orientation of transformation punctuated by moments of intentional celebration and delight, the rest. And in a world that is fractured, part of seeking harmony is not giving up. It's going forward into the waters, being open to whatever may be, knowing that to live as conscious beings is to face everything, the good, the bad, and everything in between. So that is number 3. Sacred harmony. Can we sing different songs and have them be connected with each other? That comes from this acknowledgement that there are different songs that we sing, different peoples, and within each of us, we're singing multiple songs simultaneously. I'm drawing this from teaching from Rabbi Abraham Isaac Kook, who's a early 20th century Jewish mystic. The whole teaching is in your package that I've left on the chairs or that's available online. And it's a beautiful poem. But for now, just let's take a look at these different songs. The song of ourselves. That is the path of finding out who we truly are as individuals. And it's an endless journey. There's actually an ever unfolding world of richness. We can find just really, really finding out who we are. Who am I? Who am I? And these are songs that each of us sing, but there's also people who are self people. They are singing the song of the self, and they form part of this tapestry. We have the songs of our people, or the songs of our community. What is so to speak, the song of Theosophy? What does that sound like? If everything has a melody, what is the sound of the soul of this community? What is the sound of the soul of any gathering, any people, any tribe, any civilization? And how does the song of our group harmonize or not with the song of ourselves? The song of humanity, a wider circle. We connect with the well-being, with the joys and the sorrows of the whole human species, and we hope for the greater uplift and perfection of all beings who dwell on earth. Finally, the song of existence. That includes the rocks and the trees and the animals and the spiritual beings and all the dimensions. The fourfold song. It's when we can sing all of these together in a harmonious way. This is a path, and it's also a map. This is one version of what it means to be realized. To be someone who knows themselves, is connected with their family and their community or their tribe, but that doesn't exclude them from singing the song of all people and of all beings. And in many ways, this is a purpose why we're here. I mean, I cannot sing your self song for you or your people song for you, but I'll say from the perspective where I'm coming from, this is a roadmap to well-being, to wholeness, to harmony. And sometimes things happen in the world or in our own personal lives that causes one song to get louder and another song to get quieter, or things to be harmonious. But it's the balance over time. It's an equilibrium. So that's number 4. And now it says Roman numeral 9. That's kind of interesting. But this is teaching number 5. If you have something to write with, or not, you can imagine this in your mind. But this is it's a challenge. And the challenge is to write first the Roman numeral 9, which maybe I'll help you out there. That's what 9 looks like as a Roman numeral. And the challenge is, when you're ready, can you write a single line, just one line, and transform Roman numeral 9 into a 6? A 6. Yeah, that's the challenge. Changing a Roman numeral 9 into a 6 with just one line. Ready for the great reveal? Look at that. Look at that. So note, I said Roman numeral 9 into a 6. I didn't say Roman numeral 6. I know it's a little bit of a trick, but the point is, with a shift in perspective, things that we thought were impossible can become possible. Did anyone here get it right? Yeah? 1 or 2? Okay. So imagine if instead of this being an individual activity, that we could consult the wisdom of others. I bet if we had gone around in some facilitated manner, pretty soon everyone would have gotten this answer, or at least they might not have been sure this was what I was asking for, but you would have got it, just because we could learn from each other. And so the 5th teaching, it's about learning from each other. To have that shift in perspective. On any given topic, to some degree, after being here just for a couple of days, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir on this one. Multiple sources. There are many angles and perspectives and opinions on what is true and what is real. Our most influential text is called the Talmud, and the Talmud was a series of discussions between sages, between rabbis, over the course of about 500 years. And it was eventually recorded in a book, but it never really ended. That one way of understanding Judaism is as a long conversation, a dialogue about what's the best way to live and what is true. And there are very few answers given in the Talmud, but there are a lot of questions held in tension. Because nobody knows everything. Can we find a way to disagree with each other to be constructive? In Hebrew, the term is machloket l'shem shamayim. Let me say that back. Okay. Machloket l'shem shamayim means a disagreement for the sake of heaven. In other words, a disagreement to build as opposed to destroy, a disagreement for the highest good. Now, I think there are obviously ways to go too far with disagreements. They can turn into yelling matches or all kinds of things. But we can also go too far on the other end. That's an imbalance if we don't ask, if we don't question, if we don't challenge. It can sometimes feel like it's disrespectful in certain cultural contexts to challenge people. But there's a lot of cultures where challenging someone is a sign of respect, because I respect you enough to tell you what's going on inside my mind or heart. So holy disagreement, and there's a lot of subtlety here about how to do it in a way that builds and doesn't destroy, but the essence of it is we ought to be consulting many sources on anything that we really think is valuable, because not everyone has the whole truth or perspective. So we've made it. These 5. Sacred work, the work of transformation, acknowledging the fractures in the world and doing our best to be present with them in a way that can facilitate actual organic healing and transformation, not covering them over, but allowing their inner luminosity to emerge. Sacred rest, reminding ourselves of all of the goodness in this world and not getting mired and consumed by the work, because at every moment, there's so much to be grateful for. We have sacred trust. When things are not easy, taking that next step. We might not know how it all is going to turn out, but having a trust in the basic goodness of reality itself and the fundamental existence of true connection, even when things are unclear. Sacred harmony. Balancing all of the songs that we sing, being our truest selves with a capital S, being connected to our communities, to our people, to our families, being connected to every human on the planet and all the other sacred beings as well. And finally, sacred disagreement. There's a joke that Jews tell each other that I've also heard exists in many other cultures, which was funny to find that out. But it's a story of someone in the Middle Ages, a Jewish man who wants to leave the kingdom. And so there's a rule that he has to go to the king. And he says, I'd like to, I'm going to go somewhere else. I'd like to leave the kingdom and move. And the king says, well, didn't we, let you have your religious festivals? And this guy says, can't complain. And the king says, well, we even let you have your scroll to read in synagogue. We let you do it all. And the Jewish man says, can't complain. And the king says, well, I even let you make pilgrimage to Jerusalem and come back. So what's the deal? Why are you leaving? And the Jewish man looks at him and he says, because I can't complain. Holy disagreements. Can we speak things out? Yes, it's funny. Maybe the 6th teaching is a sense of humor that will get you through a lot. But this is the essence of it. And so to everything there is a season, right? This comes from the book of Ecclesiastes. And a time to every purpose under heaven. It also comes from the Birds, right? It's a great song. A time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. There's a time for everything. There's a time for work and there's a time for rest. There's a time for bringing light into the world, and there's a time for trusting in the dark. There is a time for singing our soul's song, and then there's a time for singing the song of everyone else. There's a time to agree, and there's a time to disagree. And a lot of this is about discerning what's needed and when. I'll end this portion before the Q&A with a story. Have you heard the parable of the pit? Maybe by another name. I don't know where it comes from, but there's someone who's walking to work, and her normal way of walking, this time there's a big construction site, and she kind of looks and she says, "Oh, it's okay, I'll be able to manage." And she sort of steps over the construction sign and falls into a pit. But she's okay, she's just really dirty. And so she goes to work and is a little embarrassed, but turns out all right, she's not harmed. And so the next day, she goes and she says, "I know what I did wrong last time. I took a right step instead of a left step. I'm going to go down this way." And she falls in the dirt again. And she goes to work and she's still embarrassed. And so this happens a few more days, and try as she might, it just doesn't seem to be going terribly well. And she wanted to save those 5 minutes and go that way. And on the next day, she walks and she says, "You know what? I'm taking another route today." That's the whole story. That's the parable of the pit. There is a time to go into the deep, muck, and there's a time to have an easy life, and it's all good. It's all okay. It's about finding the right tools for the right moment. And thank you for allowing me to share a few tools with you today.
I am most impressed with your presentation. Really, really deep and excellent. I must ask, though, it has been so focused on each one of us and in mentoring and trying to help heal ourselves. How do we address what's happening on the outside in this fractured world which we are right now experiencing?
In many ways, these 5 and these types of teachings, they're meant to be proactive. I spent most of the summer in a hospital training in chaplaincy skills several years ago. And one of the things that I learned there, which made me respect chaplains more, but also made me realize that I was not called to be a chaplain, was that there was a sense of being a spiritual paramedic that, let's say famous hospital in Boston, and there were people flying from all over the world for sort of hoping for miracles. And sometimes people would just be on their last days and they would meet me and ask me if I could teach them how to pray or something like that, which was a huge honor, but it was also very hard because learning how to pray or meditate before we have a catastrophic situation is the ideal. So my first answer really is we ought to be thinking about the balance of our world before things are falling apart in a big way. And as much as there is plenty to be worried about right now, if we look at history, it could get, it could be worse than this by a lot. So yeah, that's a big part of this, is keeping an eye out for the whole and trying to preempt a lot of this, but also then asking, what can we do as individuals? Like, what can we interface with? There are some things that we'd like to be able to fix. All of us, I'm sure. I will speak for myself. Absolutely. I wish I could wave a wand and solve a lot of the world's problems right now, but what can we do? There are times when we can't do much except cultivate well-being in our lives and help out people in our neighborhood and those kinds of things, and that's all. But my hope is that the more we can actualize this sense of planting seeds and being proactive, the more we can empower our world leaders to make the right decisions as needed. But it's a tough question about what to do if things really get bad. I'll say anything that we can do right now with the larger picture in mind is we should take.
Thank you very much, Matthew. I really enjoyed your presentation as well. I wanted to, ecclesiastics always seemed to me like that portion very fatalistic. In other words, you had this time, this time, this time that you were specified to go through or to endure. And although I would think it was lifted or written to be uplifting and so you could deal with life, I just wanted to know, how is that perspective in today's issues? Should we accept it's a time for war, or is it a time for peace?
These are big questions. I'll say, firstly, I think Ecclesiastes has been interpreted to be more optimistic. It's very equanimous in a lot of ways, or even sort of existentially a little depressed, if depending on how you read it. Like, it's not a particularly optimistic text, but like anything, this is, the Bible becomes grist for the mill in the interpretive traditions. And so the sense of balance is, yes, what's being derived from it here. But a time for war and a time for peace, all I can say is I pray for peace every day. I wish, I mean, really my expertise is in Jewish mysticism, if you will, and not sort of global politics. But I believe that either if we're assessing what's actually happening in our world, or if we're striving to be a blessing and to help prevent, I think these 5 are a great start. Even just analyzing a situation. Let's look into it, but let's not be overwhelmed by it, right? The balance between work and rest. There are some great unknowns here. I'm just going to keep going and trust that it'll sort itself out, or that I'll have clarity, right? Finding that harmony on these 4 songs, and then the sense of disagreement, yes, but also let's consult as many sources as we can, because though there's lots of credible sources for like current events, they're often coming from different perspectives. And there's some very credible sources on all kinds of different angles. So I just return to that.
This might be a little bit of a curveball, but one one thing that's always impressed me in Judaism is the concept of atonement, the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, and I don't see it as much in Eastern philosophy. It really stands out to me as a beacon of, this idea, and I wondered if you felt like expanding on that at all.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and first of all, about curveballs, no worries. I mean, I didn't quite say it, but this is a conversation starter. This is not the end of it. So again, rather here or the rest of the weekend or whenever, I'm happy to talk about any of these factors and to hear your thoughts and questions and all that. Right? A holy disagreement, perhaps, or agreement. So Yom Kippur, I don't know, do you mean the idea of atoning as a particular season of atonement? Right, so the word for atone, well, if you were to do a little bit of wordplay, you could read it as at one. The Day of Atonement becomes the Day of At-One-ment. And it goes back, there's different eras and different iterations, but it, in essence, is about coming to a place of connection and harmony with people we have wronged. And the traditional view is the idea of we've sort of sinned against God. I tend to view that as sinning, so to speak, against our true self. There are things that we do, actions that we take they're betrayals of self. I mean, it's a relatively common thing, and right, it's not like a special or rare, actually. And same with how we deal with others. The metaphor I used about tying together the knot, that's what it's all about. This word in Hebrew, tshuva, often translated as repentance, it really means return. It's returning to self, it's returning to source, it's returning to wholeness and well-being. And it's a virtue to return, to do that kind of work, to atone. But it, again, as a householder tradition especially, most people do not think about that every moment of every day. So there's a season for it. Yeah, Yom Kippur is a single day. It happens, 10 days into the month of Tishrei, sometime in September, October, usually. But it's a season because this is the time to do it. It's where people are going to come together. I can, turn to my family or my friends and say, if there's anything I've done to wrong you, I apologize. Or often, that thing I did when I wronged you? I'm very sorry. This is where, and have a conversation about it. So I think a lot of it, really the kind of part that stands out perhaps in the midst of this conversation we're having, is that there's a time for it. And you can do it at any day. Any day can be restful. Any day can be work-oriented, but there is wisdom in a calendar, whether it's a daily calendar or a yearly calendar, because it reminds us, this is as a community or as a family, this is when we're going to orient towards this virtue together.
The passage from Kook that you reproduced here mentions the world to come. Could you tell us what you understand by the world to come?
Sure, yeah. So the world to come, it's like, how many answers do you want? Because often these days, it's understood as heaven on earth. So to say that oasis time, that Shabbat is a taste of the world to come, a taste of heaven on earth. So Judaism as a whole is a very this world tradition. We are not as interested in topics about the afterlife as we are about topics in this life. So perhaps unsurprisingly, there are many different views, competing views about what happens to us after we die, or what heaven really is at all, including reincarnation, but a whole lot of other things too. And Olam Haba, the world to come, is a word that means everything from heaven, and sort of like Garden of Eden style, afterlife, to heaven on earth that we are trying to build together to bring a sense of peace and connection, right? The sort of this garden on this plane that we can tap into on one day a week or in moments of Shabbat consciousness. And it's also, the world to come is associated with the Sefer of Bina, with the Divine Mother in Kabbalah. It's a nickname who's also actually the world of return, the world of tshuva, and it's a state of consciousness. Yeah, I don't know how much more I could kind of spell it out from that, but the world to come that Rav Kook in that poem is referring to, there is a book called The Chapters of Song, and in that book, it's 6 chapters or so, and it's a medieval text that lists all of the songs that all parts of the world sing. The sky sings a song, and the fox sings a song, and the trees sing a song, and it's all about listening to the songs of all reality. And so the 4th song, the song of all existence, he is riffing on this text, and he's saying, and quoting the text, someone who sings the song of all existence every day will have a place in the world to come. And what that means, I believe, he's saying is if we connect with the inherent beauty and spirituality of all creatures beyond the human, is we help create a world that is Edenic, that is closer to that vision of heaven and earth.
In part of the talk, you talked about the Ein Sof and the Kabbalistic. Is that like an emanationist type other world that he's speaking of?
Yeah, it is. What was the term you coined, Ravi? You said they're not a creation myth, but an emanation myth or something like that. There is something common there with Kabbalah and what you were describing as the ancient Hindu myth. And one of my teachers, the way he framed it, and again, I can't promise how ancient this is, but it's very beautiful, is that if the infinite is truly infinite, then it must also manifest as the finite, because the infinite without the finite is not truly infinite. And so there's this automatic, if you will, or self-revealing nature of the infinite to produce finitude in our world. And that, interestingly enough, the more finite we can become, the more of a sense of actual separateness from the infinite, if we can really go to those places, the dark places, the places of constriction or isolation, there is a great capacity to tap into infinity because it has this binary, harmonious relationship. So that's one way of understanding it. But the infinite, what they really say is that there's no description. It's beyond words. And so take it all with a grain of salt.
It's really a remark of Rabbi Hillel, which has struck me very much, because Jews saying that they are chosen people have caused more trouble to them than anything else. So Rabbi Hillel actually made this remark that although God had made this offer to all the nations, Jews were the only foolish ones to accept it.
Yeah, sometimes we say, for this I was chosen. I'd like to just offer one final brief story from the Mishnah. It's 1,800-year-old rabbinic text. there was someone named Honi the Circle Drawer. He was a magical shaman of sorts. And he was walking along the road and he saw a man planting a carob tree. Honi said to him, "This tree, after how many years will it bear fruit?" The man said to him, "It will not produce fruit until 70 years have passed." Honi said to him, "Wow, and you will live to be 70 years? You will wait that long to eat from this tree?" And the man said to him, "Just as my ancestors planted trees for me, I too am planting trees for my descendants." So as we work with the fractures in our world and find harmony, let's keep in mind, we've inherited so much wisdom, we're going to pass on so much wisdom. Let's do it for the longest sense. This is a multi-generational journey, and I'm happy to be on the road with you.